There is no chance when we stand before God. He is a righteous judge. He sees the beginning from the end. And every judgment that he pronounces is completely righteous. He's not unjust in any of his ways. None of his ways. Going on to verse 20, this is a verse, the theme of the message here. It says, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter." This way of thinking is an absolute distortion of reality. The first definitive act that God ever committed was he separated light from darkness. That was the first act of distinction that we see in the scriptures. And he did this intentionally. He distinguished the one from the other because they are not to mix with each other. Jesus said it this way in John chapter 3 and verse 19. "And this is the condemnation, that the light has come into the world and men love darkness rather than light because their deeds were evil. For everyone practicing evil hates the light and does not come to the light lest his deeds should be exposed." It's one thing for people to sin and know that it's wrong. That's bad enough. But it's another thing for people to sin and to call it good. And that's the time that we're living in right now. We are living in a time when evil is being called good and good is being called evil. It's delusion. The Bible says in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 that those who do not receive the love of the truth, God will send a strong delusion upon them. Not the devil. The longer a person rejects and rejects and rejects, there's what one of my favorite preachers ever, the late David Wilkerson, he used to call this a judicial blindness comes over a person. The more they harden their heart to the truth and to the reality of who God is and the gospel message, God brings a blindness. He brings an inability to distinguish and discern between right and wrong. I want to talk about a few agendas this morning that are not only making headway in our country and in the Western world, but are going to become firmly rooted in our society very soon, that are evil and wicked at the core. They're not only being accepted now, they're being glorified, they're being paraded in our faces, and we are essentially being told not only do we have to be passive or neutral about this, but we must get on board and call this good and be on the train. I want to talk first about the homosexual and transgender agenda in this country, also known as the LGBTQ movement, a movement which has hijacked the rainbow, which is a symbol that God created after the flood in the book of Genesis to tell Noah and for all of us down through the centuries that he would never flood the earth again. It was a promise that was given to them. This is what's been happening just in the last couple of weeks in this vein. The governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, he recently signed a bill into law preventing school children from kindergarten to third grade from being taught about sex or gender. In response, the Walt Disney Company, which is the most famous and preeminent entertainment corporation for children in the history of the world. And by the way, I used to work for the Disney Company because ESPN, the television network, is owned by the Disney Company. A law was passed that kindergarten through third graders cannot be taught about sexual orientation, gender, these sort of things. I mean, you think this would be the most basic, fundamental reality. Disney's response, a corporation geared toward children's entertainment, they responded with a statement saying in part, quote, "The bill should never have passed. Our goal as a company is for this law to be repealed by the legislature or struck down in the courts, and we remain committed to supporting the national and state organizations working to achieve that." What they are advocating for is the sexualization and the perversion of young children. Yet they want you to come to their theme park and spend $100 a day on a ticket and ride roller coasters and go through these different obstacle courses and things that they have set up and watch all of their movies and their cartoons. I mean, this is insanity. On March 31st, the Biden administration recognized, quote, Transgender Day of Visibility, calling bills like the Florida one hateful. The same day, the vice president and her husband, as well as the first ever transgender cabinet member, who comes from Pennsylvania, by the way, a man who identifies as a woman. They welcomed 6 transgender and non-binary youth, not adults, youth, and their families to the White House. Non-binary means you don't identify as a man or a woman. It was the first time ever an American president has hosted an official event to mark this day and celebrate transgender and non-binary people. President Biden said in a video message that transgender people are, quote, made in the image of God, unquote, and that their parents should affirm their gender identity.